guys, Sir here, and this is my review of the Glorious Model O. Before the video begins, I'd like to add a quick disclaimer. This video is not sponsored by Glorious, however they did send me this mouse for free, but all opinions and thoughts are still my own. With that out of the way, here's a quick rundown of the mouse. The Glorious Model O comes in 4 colors, being matte white, matte black, glossy white, and glossy black. The matte variants weighing 67 grams, with the glossy variants being 68 grams. At the time of this recording, the matte models are currently $49.99 USD, and the glossy models are currently $59.99 USD. The one that I personally have to test out is the matte white variant. The Model O is a relatively big mouse with a length of 128mm and a width at the widest part of the base being 66mm. However, it still manages to feel small in the hand, thanks to the narrowest part of the mouse in the middle being 59mm and the overall height of the mouse being 37.5mm. More on this later. For those wondering about the sensor positioning, I'll have that on the screen right now. Speaking of the sensor, this mouse uses a Pixar 3360 sensor, which allows you to use any DPI you want in step to 100 between 400 and 12,000 DPI in the Glorious software. Another cool thing you can do in the Glorious software is rebind the DPI button altogether to a button on your keyboard and use it as an extra button in games. If you are one of the people that use multiple DPIs for whatever reason, you can also assign different color rules to the DPI indicator on the bottom of the mouse in the software to whatever color that you want. Say for 400 DPI you want green, you can do that. In the software you can also set the polling rate, liftoff distance, and even debounce time, which is essentially latency in between clicks. This is useful for if your mouse starts to double click, for example. And of course, you have lighting effects. I'm not going to go over every single one, but there are a decent amount of ones you can pick from and customize yourself in the software. Now that I've covered that, here's what I like and what I don't like about this mouse. For starters, the scroll wheel on this mouse is probably the best scroll wheel I've ever tried on a mouse. When it comes down to it, this is all personal preference, but the deep bumps on this mouse make it really tactile and really satisfying to use in my opinion. Another satisfying thing about this mouse is the mouse feet on the bottom. These are what Glorious are calling G-skates. They're not exactly like hyperglides, but for a mouse to come with mouse feet this good out of the box is a major plus for me. I've personally never paracorded a mouse before, so I'm not entirely sure how this cable is going to compare to a paracord. However, what I can say is out of the mice that I own and use, this is the best cord out of all of them, being slightly better than the Final Mouse Phantom cable. And there's the fact that this mouse is under 70 grams. If you watched my Final Mouse Ultralight review, then you would know that I enjoyed using that because of the reduction in the tension of my wrist over time. This mouse is no different. But as great as I like this mouse, it did have a couple problems. The particular one that I was using had a loose mouse 1 button, so occasionally I would feel it move around a little bit under my fingers when I was using it. I didn't end up noticing this issue too much while I was gaming, but I noticed it enough to the point where I feel like I should mention it. In terms of the shape, this mouse has a really similar shape to the FK1. Unfortunately, I do not have an FK1 to compare it to. The closest thing I had was an FK1 Plus, which is quite a bit bigger than the FK1. But what I can tell you about the shape is I was able to aim very well on it. Because of the relatively low profile, it did feel awkward at first, however after time I did get more and more used to it.
Double kill.
Oh, he's dead. Woohoo!
First place.
Overall, using the Model O was a very pleasant experience. One thing I can say though is after long periods of time, I did experience some cramping in my hand after strenuously practicing tracking aiming. As someone with fairly large hands, 20 centimeters long by 10 centimeters wide, I was kinda surprised by this. I mentioned earlier that the narrowest part of this mouse was relatively small. I say relatively because it's not exactly small, however when you compare it to something like the Final Mouse Ultralight, the Glorious Model O is about 1/8 of an inch narrower. This is mostly because the final mouse has a ledge at the bottom of the base, whereas the Model O does not. This difference may seem minute, however, I do think it played a role in my hands cramping up. But at the end of the day, I'd still recommend this mouse to people with my hand size and smaller. In conclusion, the Glorious Model O is one of the best mice you can get on the market right now for its price range. It's nice to see companies finally listening to community feedback and producing more mice under 70 grams for large hands. As always, if you guys have any questions, let me know in the comments down below. If you liked the video, leave a like, consider subscribing, and I'll see you in the next one.